Hi, my name is Pat, and this is my channel, Book Chat with Pat, and I'm glad that you're here. Today I'm going to be speaking with you about a very exciting new event that's taking place in July. This is an event that was created by Michael K. Vaughan, and it's called Rocket Summer, where we will be reading classic science fiction throughout the month of July. Michael has drawn the title for this exciting event from the opening pages of Ray Bradbury's The Martian Chronicles. I am deeply honored and absolutely thrilled to have been asked to be a co-host of this inaugural classic science fiction event, along with an illustrious crew, including Brandy at the Booklectic, Steve Donahue, Sean D. Stanfast, Randy L. Ray, the Literate Texan, Mark at Book Time with Elvis, Greg at Another Bibliophile Reads, Gavin at Genre Books, Gareth at Books, Songs, and Other Magic, and Grammaticus Books. I am the science fiction novice of this group. But as I have said in several other videos, I have largely through Michael K. Vaughan discovered classic science fiction, and I have been avidly reading it for about the last year and a half since I first discovered Michael's channel, long before I was even thinking about starting a channel of my own. I discovered that a genre that I thought I really didn't understand is actually one that I love. So this wonderful event is structured in the following way. In the first week of July, we're going to read anything from the very beginnings of science fiction through 1939. The second week of July will be devoted to science fiction written in the 1940s. The third week will be devoted to the 1950s, and the last week of July will be devoted to works written in the 1960s. In this video, I would like to focus on a rocket load of books that could fit the first week, the very beginnings of classic science fiction. So first, I wanted to talk about Mary Shelley. She is generally regarded as the mother of science fiction with her novel Frankenstein. This was is often considered the first novel of science fiction. This book was written in 1818. And then also by Mary Shelley, I have on my Kindle The Last Man. And this one was written in 1826. And this too is a work of science fiction. It's a work of apocalyptic dystopia, describing the world in the late 21st century, which has been ravaged by an unknown pandemic. Next, I wanted to talk a little bit about H.G. Wells as another person who most definitely fits in this very early period. I have two of his works from the Science Fiction Masterworks collection. I have The Time Machine and I have The War of the Worlds. The Time Machine was first serialized in 1894 to 1895 in The New Review. And it was actually written in an earlier form 10 years before that in Science School Journal. It was ultimately published as a novel by Heinemann in 1895. So we're using 1895 as the beginning of this event, but Mary Shelley belongs in this event too, even though she's earlier than that. The Time Machine is generally considered H.G. Wells' first literary achievement. It's the story of the time traveler. Characters in this book just kind of go by titles, but they don't actually have names. He has created a time machine which, on his first trip, which he takes a trip on this to the very far future. He ends up in around 800,000 A.D. in the world of the Eloi and the Morlocks. The Eloi are these little sort of happy-go-lucky, beautiful little gentle creatures that kind of don't harm anybody at all, but they're very fragile, and they have a lot of fears, and one of their fears is the fear of the dark, and that's because the dark is inhabited by the Morlocks, and they are a much scarier race of beings. Also, fitting in this part of the event is H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, which was written between 1895 and 1897. It was serialized in Pearson's magazine in the UK and in Cosmopolitan magazine in the US in 1897. It was first published as a whole novel by Heinemann in 1898. This is generally considered the first novel to deal with the conflict between humankind and an extraterrestrial race. It has never been out of print in all those years since its publication. And it has also spawned many radio dramas, TV shows, comic books, films, and the famous 1938 radio dramatization, which was directed by and starring Orson Welles, is the version that caused absolute havoc when listeners hearing this story didn't know that it was a dramatization, and they thought that the events were actually occurring. Next, for this part of the this first week, also fitting into this week, is Edgar Rice Burroughs, and I have a number of his books that fit into the Barsoom series. I have this collection, which starts with A Princess of Mars, and then has God of Mars, Warlord of Mars, THUVIA, Maid of Mars, and The Chessmen of Mars, all in one volume. The Princess of Mars was first serialized in the pulp magazine All Story magazine from February through July 1912. It's considered the classic example of 20th century pulp fiction. And it's also an early example of planetary or interplanetary romance. This is the story of John Carter, who is a Confederate Civil War veteran, and he is prospecting in Arizona after the war when he suddenly finds himself mysteriously transported to Mars, or Barsoom as it is known by its inhabitants. John Carter eventually meets the Princess of Helium, Dejah Thoris, who is a member of the humanoid red Martian race. He rescues her from the green Martians, and they soon fall in love. There is a whole series of novels set in Barsoom. I also have a bunch of them as individual paperbacks. These are all pretty old paperbacks. The Princess of Mars, which is the first one. The Gods of Mars. Great, great covers. Warlord of Mars. THUVIA, Maid of Mars. Chessmen of Mars. And I was just struck by how fun these were. The Mastermind of Mars. Trying to get rid of the glare. A Fighting Man of Mars. Swords of Mars. This is more than is in the single volume. And the Synthetic Men of Mars. I think there are a couple more. I think there are at least 3 more that I don't have, but I've made a pretty good dent. Additionally, I have come to own a wonderful 2-volume set that was put out by the Library of America, focusing on female writers of science fiction. The first volume, it's called The Future is Female, and the subtitle is 25 Classic Science Fiction Stories by Women from Pulp Pioneers to Ursula K. Le Guin. And then, so this first volume covers women writers from 1928 through 1969. So this first volume fits our event of classic science fiction. And it actually ends in 1969 with Ursula K. Le Guin. And the second volume, put out by the Library of America, also The Future is Female. Terrific cover. And this is more classic science fiction stories by women. And this volume 2, the entire volume is devoted to women writers of the 1970s, the whole volume. So in this first volume, which I'm going to be reading from for this first for this event, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about the people that I was going to be looking at for the first week. For our first week, there in this book there are the pulp writers Claire Winger Harris, Leslie F. Stone, and C.L. Moore. Claire Winger Harris was actually the first woman ever to publish in a science fiction specialist magazine. She also created a famous list in an article that was published in 1931 in Wonder Stories, and this is a list of 16 possible science fiction plots. And the editors of this volume speculate that that might be the first writer of, regardless of gender, the first writer to have created such a delineation of, sort of what kind of elements constitute science fiction. Another writer in this collection is Leslie F. Stone, and she is believed to be the first writer to include a female astronaut in one of her stories. And she may have been the first to feature an African American character as a hero of a science fiction work. I'm not sure about that, but the editors speculate that she may have been the first. Another anthology that I have is called Sisters of Tomorrow. I just love these covers. And the subtitle is The First Women of Science Fiction. This collection also contains stories, some of the same writers in this, in the modern, in the Library of America volume, but different stories. There's no repeats, which is kind of neat. But this, the Sisters of Tomorrow, it does include Harris and Stone and more different stories by them, and then also other female writers such as Amelia Reynolds Long, Dorothy Gertrude Quick, and Lilith Lorraine. This anthology documents how women in the early 20th century contributed to the science fiction magazine community, and it showcases the work that they produced, including short stories, editorials, poetry. There's a whole section on poetry, science journalism, and also illustrations. So that's what I'm going to be choosing from for the first week of Rocket Summer. I am so excited to be participating in this event. I will be back soon to discuss my first week's reading and also to discuss potential selections for subsequent weeks of Rocket Summer. I hope that you will consider joining us in this wonderful event. As always, I thank you for watching. I hope that you're doing well. I'll speak with you again soon. Take care.